Tuesday, folks. It is February 23rd, 2021, and you're watching the Daily Mix TV. Hi, my name is Sean Patrick Hellman. Lots of news to get into, so let's get right at it. In a follow-up story from last Thursday, Facebook has done a complete 180 on Australia. They said they've reached an agreement with the Australian government to restore news pages to the social media company's platform. Now, that follows a 5-day hiatus locally due to a disagreement over payment for content. So, Facebook had removed from its platform, and this has never been done before, in Australia last week. They took out news, viewing, and sharing. Why? Legislation was being circled around the country's parliament that would effectively require Facebook and Google to pay traditional media companies for content. Now, all of a sudden, you had a lot of people who were very, very angry about this, understandably. Okay, it's another example of Facebook censoring or playing that game in terms of what people can see when they can see it and so on. Okay, now, this is not about censorship in that sense. In this case, it is about the fact that the Australian government was trying to get them to pay royalties on content, which, frankly, they should be paying unless they have a deal with the publisher. So, I'm normally not for this in business, but this is just the perfect example as to why companies like Facebook, Google, and Twitter need to be regulated. Now, again, I'm not normally for regulatory issues and regulation, especially as it relates to business, because of a bureaucratic issue and the amazing layer of stupid that goes on in a large government. Now, all of that is true, unless, of course, you're talking about a utility like a power company, like Con Ed is an example, in which case, yeah, they need to be regulated. Because I can only imagine what that would look like if they weren't. I mean, Con Ed and Superstorm Sandy. Do I need to say anything else? Probably not. But the reality in this situation is that even under scrutiny as public corporations, these companies are still trying to control the message, the narrative, and more, instead of being the simple conveyance of information that they have claimed to be since day one. Guys, you can't be both. You can't be the conduit by which information is disseminated and content is shared amongst friends and things like that, and then say, oh no, you can't use this, you can't say that, you can't do this. The time is coming when you're going to need to choose what you really are. Apple sold more iPhones than any other smartphone maker in the world in the final quarter of 2020, securing the top position for the first time in 4 years. The tech giant sold nearly 80 million iPhones in Q4, marking a 15% increase over Q4 2019. Now, this comes despite an overall 5% decline in global smartphone sales. Now, this is an indication that because Apple waited so long on 5G, that the 5G iPhone Series 12 is a massive, massive grand slam for them. Now, that does heat up competition with Samsung, which has sold more smartphones over the full year. So let's dive into this for a second. When you look at Apple and how they approach product development and things like that, they've never, ever been one to chase a trend. They are the ones who set the trend. Now, yes, often they take, things that have been around for a long time, redesign them, reimagine them so that they're simpler, easier to use, and certainly of better quality. That's what Apple's always been known for. Samsung is much more of the mass market, wholesale kind of brand in terms of, look, they use the Android platform, which is open source. Apple uses iOS. One is secure, the other is not. Open source is not a secure platform by any stretch of the imagination. So for Apple to go down the 5G route when they did was a very smart decision from a business development and marketing point of view. From an overall point of view, I would have liked to have seen them get in a little bit earlier. Only because, you had Samsung and all the Android heads going absolutely crazy over 5G and we have it, you don't. That kind of nonsense is just getting completely out of hand, especially in the tech sector. Guys, this isn't a schoolyard. This is in, 5th grade. Time to grow up, okay? So now that Apple has got the 5G iPhone 12, it's doing very well. It's going to be interesting to see how they tackle product development, especially as we get into the next few months. They're supposed to have a keynote in the next couple of months. Then, of course, there's the Worldwide Developer Conference in June. And then, of course, you've got the other keynote that happens around September, October. Though, in the last few years, Apple's been doing more and more of those sparsed throughout the year. So, we'll keep an eye on it for you and report back. We're one step closer to Skynet taking over. That's right, get ready for the invasion of the grocery store robots. The new robot named Smiley displays and delivers items normally found at checkout to customers throughout the store. So in this case, it's a robot with a cute name selling chocolate and gum. Yeah, it may not be that dangerous. Mars Wrigley said that it is working with retail-owned cooperative Wakefern and robotics provider Savioki to deploy the robot at a ShopRite store in Monroe, New York. So this is a test. Smiley will display a variety of Mars Wrigley products typically found at the checkout to shoppers throughout the ShopRite store. Why is that so important? So before I go on, let's tackle that to begin with, okay? Typically at retail, whether it's grocery or convenience, whenever you get to checkout, that is always your chance for impulse purchase driving. What does that mean? So you get up to the cashier and the cash register, and you see a small display for a Snickers bar. You're going to buy that Snickers bar because, after all, it's Snickers. You can't avoid that. When you look at how checkout marketing works, often it's about shelf talkers and things like that. So when you've got such a massive rise in self-checkout, which we'll get into in a second, this kind of thing becomes even more important. So Smiley, true to its name, features catchy tunes and dancing as it makes its rounds throughout the store, offering treats for sale. Smiley uses the latest in self-driving technology to ensure safe operation and does include sanitary wipes to safeguard shoppers. Now, the pilot for this was in fact enabled by Mars Wrigley's Launchpad program. So that was a digital innovation program that they established about 4 or 5 years ago. And it focuses on innovating the ways in which Mars Wrigley markets and sells its iconic brands through meaningful partnerships with startups. Now, they've obviously done their homework because research shows that 78%, that's a big number, of shoppers are choosing self-checkout for speed and convenience. So let's talk about CVS for a second, okay? CVS versus Walgreens. It's very interesting to watch the consumer behavior patterns in both stores. As a matter of fact, I did it yesterday. So the CVS that's diagonally across the street from me, they've got self-checkout, and they do have one register for checkout with a cashier. Whereas Walgreens, no self-checkout, all cashier. The timing to get out of CVS is less than 2 minutes. The timing to get out of Walgreens, just about 6 to 7 minutes. That's a big time waste, especially when you get into the fact that a lot of people, the reason why they're doing self-checkout, yeah, it's speed and convenience, but it's also sanitation because you're not interacting with someone. Even though there's a plexiglass thing there and even though everybody's wearing masks, there's still a chance the virus can get through. So for self-checkout, it's easier, it's faster, and for most people in their perception, it's safer. Now, as a result, traditional shopping patterns at checkout have shifted, especially when it comes to those impulse purchases we were talking about before. So Mars Wrigley and Wakefern are using Smiley to not only enhance the in-store shopping experience and drive engagement beyond the checkout aisle, but they're bringing those checkout items to people in other parts of the store. When you get into impulse buying, there is an entire focus of marketing and business development all around what happens at impulse. So let me give you one more example. When Joe Magnaca, who I love Joe, he's an old friend of mine. He was the CMO at Walgreens for a hot minute. He's the reason why, because he started out at Duane Reade. He's the reason why it became New York's drugstore. Okay, that was the positioning he thrusted through, the look boutique, the convenience, the grab-and-go format that he also helped to create for Duane Reade. When you go into a Duane Reade in New York, whenever you're at checkout, the entire right side of where you're standing in that line is all impulse buys. And that was one of his babies. So I look at that and I see the volume of product that gets purchased out of that impulse buy situation. The same cannot be said at CVS, where you don't really have as much convenience or impulse with respect to self-checkout. So CVS needs to make some changes. Walgreens and Duane Reade, yeah, you need to put in some self-checkouts there. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. I'm super excited, to see Smiley and all of these things happening and how they're enhancing the shopping experience is a very cool thing, especially at the tail end of the pandemic. Mars Wrigley, I just can't get away from this company today, announced yesterday that Skittles gummies will be available at Walmart locations nationwide, followed by additional distribution at retailers nationwide in a few months. So, available in the original 5 fruity flavors and wild berry variety, Skittles gummies are said to deliver a rainbow of bold flavors that can be experienced one flavor at a time or all together for an exciting and certainly unpredictable experience. Now, the new gummy candy is going to be available at those other retailers in May, and they'll be available in peg bags and sharing size stand-up pouches. New candy formats always intrigue me. You're getting the same exact flavor in theory, but in a different format. So right now, gummies are extremely popular, so it's going to be interesting to see how sales stack up compared to their core product. Back in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, I remember Hershey's and Mars pushing out the poppable format. So they were the stand-up pouches where like a Snickers bar came in, a little round dot like that. They were really good. But the reason why at that time they did that was that they could charge more money per unit than they could a standard candy bar because of the unique shape, the convenience, the grab-and-go format, all of those things. So poppables don't really exist to the way that they did back then. So the question is this going to be another in-and-out trend? Only time will tell. We'll keep an eye on it for you. Looks like LVMH, through its Moet Hennessy division, is acquiring a 50% stake in rapper and entrepreneur Jay-Z's champagne brand, Armand de Bragnac, or better known as Ace of Spades, in an effort to up its cool factor while expanding distribution. Unfortunately, terms of the deal weren't released at the announcement yesterday. However, Jay-Z's lyrics have previously hinted at the brand's value. On a 2018 Meek Mill track, Jay-Z rapped, "I'm 50% of Douce and it's debt-free. 100% of Ace of Spades, worth half a B, meaning billion." Sources speculate the brand has grown in value in the last few years. So Jay-Z, whose real name is Sean Carter, he helped the brand sales skyrocket back in 2006 when he was featuring one of their bottles in a music video after a public fallout with Cristal. Carter, who he'd been using Cristal in all of his videos and more. There were a lot of rappers that were pushing out messaging around Cristal because of its perceived value, its heightened perception of being a rock star brand, hyper expensive, hyper luxury, very good quality. Now, I've been drinking Cristal most of my life, so I can tell you that is absolutely true. However, Carter, who had been using Cristal in all those videos, accused the brand of racism back in 2006 after an executive for the brand said in an interview that partnering with a rapper would harm its image. Now, just 8 years later, in 2014, Carter bought Ace of Spades for an undisclosed sum. The brand sold more than 500,000 bottles worldwide in 2019 alone. So Moet Hennessy president and CEO Philippe Chaus said that Armand de Bragnac breaks barriers and reflects contemporary ideas of luxury, even as it supports historic champagne-making traditions. So, Moet Hennessy has always been good about finding that balance in contemporaneous versus classic. So that quote is not a surprise to me. Carter has said that the partnership will help Ace of Spades grow and flourish, noting Moet Hennessy's track record of developing luxury brands like Dom Perignon and Veuve Clicquot. Now, Carter is one of several celebrities to profit from a partnership with an alcohol brand. And yes, he does own Doucet Cognac with the Bacardi family. I believe they're still 50-50 partners in that. And then, of course, you have George Clooney and the whole issue with Casamigos selling for $1 billion, all of those things. The spirit space right now is in one very, very strange flux. And I'm going to dive deeper into this on Thursday or Friday of this week because there's just not enough time today to go through it. But the net with respect to this story, with respect to Ace of Spades, for LVMH and Moet Hennessy, brilliant strategy. For Jay-Z, I have challenges on this, in terms of his support of the brand, knowing how he's supported Doucet and what's happened with that brand over its time. I mean, it's been almost a decade, and frankly, it's still not really made that big a dent in the market. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens and how Moet Hennessy positions this go forward once they take over the brand. All right, guys, I'm out of time. My name is Sean Patrick Hillman. If you guys have any questions, comments, or story ideas, please feel free to email thedailymixtv@gmail.com. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on Hump Day.